for thinkingrealestate.com.
And here we are.
We are here.
And it's 9:30, right?
I don't know what time it is today.
Next week it will be different time.
Yes.
It'll
What do
be darker or lighter? Darker.
we spring ahead.
So it'll be darker.
Yes. That's Laura Dwyer Schlecke,
And we have a guest today.
City Councilwoman of the Stars, Mike Meyer,
Mark.
or Mark. Both of them
Mike. Yeah.
are on assignment today. And you do have a special, very special
Very
guest.
special gift. Very timely. We have Dave Taylor, Jackson City Assessor to the Stars.
Yes.
Good morning.
Welcome, Dave.
Thank you.
So I've already gotten a text this morning on a question, but we won't ask that one right off the bat. You probably want to know why I have Dave in here. So
You know I
bring me
do.
in here.
Why do you have Dave here?
Dave, why do we have you here? I got all this mail. I had to open all these envelopes. Tell me what was in them.
Well, we recently sent out everybody a change of assessment notice that owns property in the city. And for that matter, you should have got anybody that owns property in the state should have gotten one.
Is there a deadline that you have to receive those by?
And we have to mail them at least 2 weeks in advance
Of?
of the first day of the border review.
Oh, okay. So your border review is in...
Our border review is on the 12th and the 13th of March.
Okay.
So this coming Monday and Tuesday.
So another municipality may have theirs in April, or...
No, that's state law says that the Monday following the first Tuesday in, no, excuse me. Oh.
There's a formula.
Yeah, there's a formula for figuring that out, yes.
What
So
is the Board of Review, Dave?
Board review is an option or a place for somebody that can appeal their property assessments. It's one of the few places you get to go and say, hey, you guys got it wrong. And you'll have somebody that will listen to you, and they'll make the board review as an independent group that makes a decision on what those assessments will be.
My cousin just got appointed to that board, didn't she?
Yes, she did.
Who's that?
Barb Dwyer?
Oh,
Yeah. And I think she's a very excellent choice. She's very fair-minded, open-minded.
we'll find out.
We'll find out. Who else is on the board of review?
Russ Decker and Ken.
Russ goes way back.
Russ was the deputy city assessor for the city of Jackson for many years.
Yeah, way back. I remember the day.
Yeah, and Ken Stapleton is also, he's a former real estate person himself.
Okay. Sounds like a good group.
So will the Board of Review be very busy?
Probably. Okay, it's not
Were you
going to be
busy last
really
year?
bad. We weren't real busy last year. I don't expect to be extremely busy this year. We've been showing some steady declines in values. Our assessments have dropped in almost every class of property. So people understand that property values are going down, and we're able to reflect that as well.
Now, I think you do a great job, by the way, because when I do a market analysis, I pull the assessor's data after I've done mine, and we actually put it on the form. And I think the city's not too far off from a lot of the ones that I've done. Not that I'm more right than you, but
Well, thank you.
it's good backup information. But a lot of municipalities are fearful of losing tax dollars, so I do see that they don't reduce the prices like they should, taxable values like they should, or they don't agree with the property owner when they go to appeal to reduce them. And my personal opinion is that's a fear of losing tax dollars.
Oh,
You're not going to go
I'm
there,
not
are
going
you?
to go there. No, I believe
tried.
most of the assessors certainly in this county do their best to try to reflect what the property values are doing.
Okay.
I know that's what we try to do.
Right. Well,
So they want to be fair.
My job is to look at what property values are and reflect those as my assessments.
So let's start with, how do you determine, explain to everybody how you come up with a value.
Well,
So I know there's a
we've gone
process.
out to all the properties in the city. We have a record as to what the building sizes are, what type of properties they are, how many bedrooms and bathrooms, and then we go out and do studies as to what properties are selling for in each neighborhood. The city is broken down into 36 separate neighborhoods. So we do a study in each neighborhood and try to reflect those changes based on that information.
And how far, is that a 1 year time frame or a 2 year time frame? Because I've seen varying.
Well, the state has mandated that at least this last year, that we use a 1 year sales study. The reason we're doing that is because that you have declining values. When we have typically rising values, the state has in the past normally uses a 2 year sales study.
Okay. And then if I buy a foreclosure today, let's say, and by December 31st of this year, I've renovated it, what are you going to do it based on the value you think it is of December 31st? Or at what point are you going to determine the value of that property?
All properties in the state of Michigan are assessed on something called tax day. Tax day is December 31st of the previous year.
Okay.
So the assessment you're seeing for the 2012 tax year is based on how the property sat in December 31st of 2011. This is can be a problem because if you have your house burned down sometime in January, your assessment will not reflect that until the following year. However, if you were to build a house, you wouldn't see that change in assessment, that improvement to the property go on the assessment roll till the following year.
Okay. Now on the sheet this notice you send out, it also tells me my homestead, does it not? Yep.
It does. At
100%.
the bottom of the form, it'll talk about your principal residential exemption. And that used to be what's called the homestead. That became confusing because there's also a homestead exemption on your property or your income taxes. So the state changed the name to principal residential exemption. If you own and occupy your own home as your principal residence, you're allowed an exemption for the school operating taxes. And that should be reflected if you own and occupy your own home. It should say that it's 100%. If it's not, you probably need to contact your local assessor.
And so we have until what, May 1st? So if I sell someone a house today and it was a foreclosure, zero homesteaded, and they can change that to 100% by May 1st, is
That's
that correct?
They need to own and occupy the house as of May 1st.
Are you taking calls?
Sure. Now's a good time.
Good morning. I have a question.
Yeah.
I received my statement and my FEV went down, but my taxable assessment went up. What's the difference?
Oh,
Great question.
Good question.
Great question. That was on the list.
Absolutely. Proposal A of 1994 changed how we calculate how taxes are calculated. And the assessor is responsible to set the assessed value at whatever the property or half what the property is worth. The taxable value is a number that is calculated, and the calculation is basically the previous year's taxable value minus any losses, plus any additions, times the inflation rate, or 5%, whichever is less. This year's inflation rate is 2.7%. So the taxable value can be no higher than what the assessment is. So what has happened in a lot of cases is you've seen your taxable or your assessment for many years up to probably 2007 going up and up and up if you've owned your home for a long period of time. That taxable value stayed fairly stable, going up only the rate of inflation. At one time we were seeing 8 and 10% increases in assessments, and your taxable value is going up 2 to 3%. Now on the downside of that is property assessments are dropping. The taxable value by law still has to go up 5% or the rate of inflation, whichever is less. So it's a good thing in that you're not having to pay your the amount of taxes would be on the assessment, but it's a bad thing if you see, as you're seeing your things go, your taxable value rising when your property values are actually decreasing.
People don't like that, do they?
People don't usually understand it. When
Right.
you explain it to them, and you can, we have I can bring up a property and on our computer system, and it actually shows the difference between this assessment and this taxable value. And you can see how you have this large bubble that going up, which is what your assessment is. and this slow, steady increase, which is what your taxable value is. Now that this assessments are coming down, you're seeing that it's getting closer and closer to them, and a lot of them in the city are now capped, what we call capped by the assessment. So even though the taxable value would be higher, it can be no higher by law than what the current assessment is. So their
Are you
assessment has
taking
gone
calls?
down.
Sure.
Good morning.
Hey, good morning. How are you?
Good.
Couple things. First of all, Dave, I want to commend you on bringing some honesty and dignity to that office. You're doing a real good job. Keep it up.
Thank
Now,
you.
a couple things. First of all, what was the rate of inflation?
2.7%.
All right. Now, if somebody can't make the board of review next week, can they write in a protest?
In the city of Jackson, all taxpayers are allowed to write a letter of protest to the Board of Review.
Okay, and do you have to have a specific form that you send to you, or can you just do it letterhead?
You can do it on letterhead. We would prefer a form. You can get our form off the City of Jackson's website and go to the assessor's office. Our website is www.cityofjackson, all one word, .org. If you go to assessor's office as a department, you'll find assessor's forms, and you will have a form there for you.
Okay, now let me give you a scenario. You get two houses next to each other in a particular neighborhood, and say they're both worth $50,000. One house sells on a foreclosure sale for $20,000. Does that, and the other house owned by somebody is up for sale now? If that house that was foreclosed on sells for 20, will that drag down the true cash value of the owner-occupied home?
Well, that's an interesting question. I don't believe that the foreclosure sales are a good indication of what the actual market value of properties are. According to the state and the Appraisal Institute, which is an institute that is the guide, to me, is the guiding force in property appraisal. To be a good market sale, it has to be a willing buyer, a willing seller, both, and neither being under duress. My feeling is that a bank sale, a foreclosure sale, is a property that is under duress. The banks are required to sell them, and they don't have the same type of ownership interest that you or I would have on a property. So we don't use the foreclosure sales in our sales study, and I
At
don't.
all? Even if that's the only, all you have?
I don't use the foreclosure sales because I don't. There's always other sales that I can use.
Okay.
I haven't come into an area where I don't have any sales.
Okay.
What I do find is that we do studies on sale and resale on the foreclosures, and they run between 50 and 300% increase in value on a resale from the foreclosures. So that's the primary reason we do not use them.
If somebody's interested in buying a foreclosed property, would it be wise for them to come down and talk to you in advance and say, listen, this property is assessed at $100,000. I'm going to buy it for $35,000. Can you give them a range of next December 31st what you're going to actually tax them at? Because first of all, they're going to have to pay whatever for this year, whatever you taxed them at last year, regardless of what the sale is. But can you give them a little direction? Because I know of a person who bought a property, it wasn't in the city, and he got it for a pretty good price. It wasn't foreclosed, but he got it for a real good price, as a matter of fact. And then the following year, he went in and he got his tax statement, and it was like 2.5 times what he paid for it. And the argument was, she just got a good deal. But that's not the value of that property. So if somebody came down to talk with you or was going to buy a piece of property, would you give them some sort of a guidance as to what the property tax is going to be or assessment is going to be in the following year?
Well, there's a number of things that you've brought up here. The first is the assessors. I think I should point out that the State Tax Commission, which oversees property assessments in the state of Michigan, says that assessors aren't allowed to do what's called following sales. And following sales would be, well, somebody bought the house for 35, so I've got to assess it, you got to assess it for 17.5, because that's half of what I paid for it. We're actually not allowed to do that. And the state does checks to see if we're doing those kinds of things, and we can lose our certification if we do those kinds of things. So that, I need to point that one out right up front.
Right, and as a realtor, usually what I tell people, if it's a distressed sale, it's not likely that the assessed value is gonna be 50% of the sale price, that the assessor's gonna base it on fair market value.
Right, and so I can probably, I've seen property values in the city showing about a 10%. On average, residential properties have been going down 10, 11%, 10 to 12% for the last 4 years. I can certainly give you an indication of where I think it is. The other thing you can do is point out that, well, I bought this house, but there's no copper in it, there's no plumbing in it, they've taken all the copper out of the walls, the roof's shot, et
But
cetera,
if
et
you buy
cetera.
it in February and you're not gonna assess the value of that until the following December, so by then the copper's gonna be back in the property.
Exactly. And
So-
so the price you paid may not be what the property's worth at the end of the year either. We're looking at, we're trying to make assumptions that properties are what they are not, and it's hard to say on any particular property, but we do go out and look at a lot of properties every year. We're trying to keep up with changes in the world.
Dave, if you want to go before the board of review, do you make an appointment? Do you show up? How does that work?
In the city of Jackson, we ask that you make appointments. That relieves congestion in our office, and it makes it so you're not having to sit and wait. At one time, we would have people waiting 2 hours to sit and before they could get to be heard by the board. So we've asked that people make appointments, and there is appointments available, and you'll just need to call our office. Our phone number is on the change of assessment notice. You'll have to check, for the folks in the other jurisdictions, you'll probably want to check with whatever jurisdiction you're in to see what their requirements are.
Now, do they make a decision on this? How do they make their decision?
The board will actually just take information, and then they will do some research on the properties, and they will make a decision later. And
Okay.
you will get notified usually within 3 to 4 weeks after the board is done.
And I assume the most valuable piece of paper I could bring to you is an appraisal, but short of an appraisal, is there anything else that I can bring to prove to you that I disagree with your evaluation?
An appraisal would be very, very helpful. You're going to want to bring some information saying why you think the property is worth less than what we're saying it is. Condition could certainly be a factor.
So they could take pictures and bring you
They
interiors?
could take pictures and bring them in, yes, they could do
Okay.
that. That's really the key, is you want to be able to show that our value is wrong, or that.
What if I have a house
different-
that's on the market, been on the market a year, and no one's written an offer, and I reduce the price? Can I bring you the history from the realtor that?
Certainly.
Okay.
In your experience, what's normally the biggest issue here?
Quite often it's condition of the property, people coming into the board, or a lot of people come in just because they don't understand the process or what we do. And then sometimes it's just, I just don't think you're right. Well, okay, we have our opinion, you have yours. Well, that's really what it comes down to.
Right,
Sure.
exactly. Well, is there anything else you want to make sure we know about the assessing process?
Oh, that's, no.
We could talk about personal property taxes, but that'd probably take another show.
Oh, boy.
Because that's becoming a hot topic.
Well, I'm really ambivalent on the personal property. It's an interesting process. The issue becomes, how do you make up the revenue? It's always been the issue with
Right.
personal property. How do you make up the revenue to the local governments? I know the city of Jackson has financially been very strapped for a number of years now. You take another,
Was it $1 million or something?
yeah, there's probably $1 million, $2 million, another $2 million out of our budget. I don't remember the number off the top of my
Right.
head, but if you take a chunk of change out of the city again, it's certainly going to affect.
Something.
Well, yeah, we're already laying off police and fire. We've laid off police and fire. My department's staff is down 30%, you can't continue to take losses like that and still function as a government.
Well, unfortunately, there were other people calling in, and we don't have time for the calls. So
You should just have a longer show.
we should. Mark Daly should let us roll right into his time frame, but then we'd have a lot of calls. He gets a lot of callers. Well, thanks for coming, and if anybody wants to get a hold of the assessor's office, they can go to the cityofjackson.org website, and all their contact information is there. Do you want to rattle off your phone number?
Our phone number is 788-4033,
Okay.
and operators are standing by.
And then I have 3 price reductions. 485 Skyline has a wonderful house out in Hanover Horton, 121,000, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, very cool layout of a home. 8036 Sharon, it's 81,830. That's in Western School Districts. And then 1101 Pringle is down to 39,615. And then I believe we have an open house at 3662 Timms Lake this weekend, and that's a beautiful home, just under 400,000, and the open house is 1 to 2:30. You can go to the JacksonMIHomes.com website, and they have all the open houses available. And also don't forget there's the Builder Show coming up the end of March. I think it starts March 24th, that weekend, whatever that weekend is.
ThinkingRealestate.com.